You're listening to the Unresolved Life podcast, hosted by Alexandra Cousins. In this podcast, we're going to really demystify disease and the polarization around all things health, so you can heal yourself and thrive for real.
Welcome to the Enlight Life podcast. I'm your host, Alexandra Cousins, and today we are going to be diving into why you're not healing in spite of doing all the things. So, of course, this was also my case 10 years ago and many years prior to my final health breakdown, where for so many years I was thinking to myself, I am doing all the right things. Why am I not healing? And at some point, I remember thinking, you know what, I don't care what I have to eat, if I have to only eat fruit, only veggies, only meat, only this, only that. I just want to heal. And I just want someone to tell me, what do I need to do to finally break through, right? So I know super well from a very intimate place of how it feels when you're sitting in front of this big question and you're just continuously asking yourself, you know, darn it, I'm doing all the things. I'm doing the diet. I'm seeing the functional medicine practitioners. I'm doing the inner work. I'm doing all the things. Why am I not healing? So this episode really is for you, for those of you that are feeling like they're not breaking through and that are just kind of going, you know, what the heck is wrong with me? And once again, I know I was there, and I genuinely, you know, when I had my final health breakdown at the age of 40, I genuinely came to the conclusion that I just had bad genetics, that I had drawn, you know, the bad luck card, and that I was a rotten apple, and that was all there was to it. And it's easy to come to those conclusions when for years and years and years we try all the things without really getting to where we want to be. So what is it when you've tried all the things and you're still not seeing results? What is going on? Well, in the meantime, not only have I been able to help myself and regenerate myself, but of course, for the last 10 years, I've also helped numerous people. You know, I sometimes forget that we also have a nonprofit organization in South Africa that's been running for 6 years, where also we have been helping hundreds of mostly women, but some men, to regenerate and recuperate their health, in that case on a budget, and, you know, with a lot of very simple things. And that's one project. But then, of course, you know, in my own programs and my one-on-one coaching, having helped many, again, mostly women with a few men, helping them recover from oftentimes sort of like the so-called impossible, incurable situations. And I really want to say, in all of those cases, the root was several things. So number one, I would say, is that in all of those cases, the deeper emotional intricacies were not looked at, were not answered to. And, you know, and that's a big one. That is a big one, because we can do all the emotional work, including, as I did, plant medicines and all the things. But if our deepest pain, our deepest trauma and hurt, which for the most part happens before we are verbal. So for us, for many of us, especially when we are those of us dealing with chronic degenerative conditions, with chronic health issues, it's because these traumas occurred before we were verbal. So many of us really struggle to actually verbalize, especially cleverly verbalize, our hurt, our pain, our traumas, our stuckness. And so it takes a different approach, and it takes, in some ways, a lot more kind of delicacy and patience, right? Because we're dealing with our inner frozen children, babies, infants. And the biggest problem here, and please listen up, because a lot of these things, they're very simply said, but to put them into practice is not so easy, which is why we're not healing. So because in a lot of cases, we have these stuck infants, frozen infants that are still living inside of us. However, our inner adult or our inner teenager, our other inner parts demonize our inner children. Demonize them, reject them, ignore them, right? And again, the only reason why I know is because that's what I did for so many years. I was completely annoyed, frustrated, disgusted by those inner parts of me that were still fully alive, fully in need of being met, being nurtured, being loved in order to grow up, right? And for so many years, that escaped me. I couldn't understand. So when it happens, we kind of create a split personality. We create, and it doesn't have to be anything, dramatic or severe. It doesn't mean that we become schizophrenic or psychopaths or anything like that. But many of us are living split off from parts of ourselves. And then we create a persona, right? And that persona can be, the yogi, it can be the goddess, the empowered sexual tantrika goddess. It can be, you name it, many things. It can be the lady boss. It can be so many things. And by creating a new persona that is not integrated with all parts, we're creating a split, and inevitably we're going to be perpetuating levels of disease. Now, this is just one aspect, one of the many reasons why you may not be healing. And that was, I would say, a big aspect for myself. And I often see that aspect being very true and accurate for many of my clients, but it's not the only one, right? It's not the only reason why you may not be healing. But this episode is about what are all the possible issues that are being overlooked and that are leading for you to stay stuck in not being able to heal, even though you're doing the proverbial everything. So definitely the psycho-emotional, psycho-spiritual aspect. And of course, then there can be split-offs, right? Many different things to look at. But the psycho-spiritual, psycho-emotional aspect, definitely something to keep in mind. And to keep in mind that, you may be sitting there and going like, but Alex, I've done all the things. I've done the medicine work, I've done the shadow work and so forth. Yes, okay, you may have done, but something may still be missing. And sometimes it doesn't have to be, what I've also learned, it doesn't have to always be super complicated or complex. Sometimes you may be missing some foundational piece, and that's going to be the one, okay? So just to keep that part in mind. Another part that I see very, very, very often, I would say in about 80% of my clients, what gets missed, even though they will have worked with functional medicine practitioners and all kinds of alternative health practitioners, what is often missed is the level of cellular detoxification and subsequent regeneration that needs to happen for someone to actually heal. And so when I then propose, well, we need to do some detox, a lot of times these people say, oh, but oh my gosh, no more detox. I've done detox for so many years, with this practitioner and that practitioner and with that system and that system. And, I've even had a client who said, well, I've done 100 colonics, for goodness sakes. Like, come on. If I'm not clean, then, I don't know how and who and so forth. So yeah, I mean, just detoxing alone and even doing 100 colonics alone does not mean that you have detoxed your body. And, these are all things I had to learn first on myself and then subsequently on my clients. So even just as an example, the lady with whom we recorded a podcast, she's also a student in the academy, Zara, when she said, oh, I've done 100 colonics. Well, good for you. But that does not mean that there isn't still things sitting in your colon and your digestive system, because the digestive system has not been fully healed and regenerated. So a lot of times we can focus on, one aspect. Yeah, but I've done the 100 colonics. Well, it doesn't mean that your liver is regenerated. It doesn't mean that, you've been living a regenerative lifestyle. And that is going to make all the difference ultimately. And in fact, in the case of Zara, her mind was blown by the deeper enzyme flushes that she's been doing. And of course, all the other supportive work. And within 3 months, she saw results that she wasn't able to achieve in 10 years prior of cellular detox, right? Or what she thought was cellular detox. So definitely another big aspect, of this journey is that the level of detoxification that is done does not go deep enough. And now specifically in the case of, many who come to me from a background of having worked with functional medicine practitioners, when I ask them, well, with all the supposed detox that you've done and all the things that you've been taking, what have you actually eliminated, right? Like, have you actually seen things eliminate in your stools? Have you seen, things eliminate from the liver, from your kidneys? Like, what kind of symptoms have you had? What kind of things have you seen leave your body? And very often the answer is, oh, well, no, I've done this flush and that flush. And I'm like, well, but so there was nothing leaving your body? Of course, sometimes with parasite cleanses, they will say, yes, there were parasites, that were released. But in some ways, as much as parasites, yes, they're interesting. Yes, they're an issue. But, another weakness of the functional medicine system is that there can be too much emphasis on parasites, whereas parasites are not real, or very rarely, very, very rarely are parasites real root causes. Because the reality is, in a system that is strong, when your endocrine system is strong, when your digestive system is strong, when your liver is strong, and your nutrition is good, there is no way that you're going to hold on to parasites and pathogens beyond a few days, right? Like, your body will just automatically deal with those, also because when your body is healthy and strong, your body is simply not going to be a good host to those pathogens. Whereas when parasites are a real and recurring issues, or all kinds of pathogens, candida, viruses, bacteria, right? When we are dealing with pathogens for a prolonged period of time, it's only because our system is a good host So what does that mean? It means worrying about killing off the candida and killing off the pathogens and the parasites and the viruses and the bacteria is only a small part of the solution. The biggest part of the solution, and this is how I work, is we're going to address the parasites and the pathogens. Absolutely. Don't worry. But the bigger work is in restoring endocrine function, in restoring good digestive system function. And that, of course, is a complex issue in of itself. It's not as easy as 1, 2, 3, because there's a lot of components to having a good digestive system. Your nervous system needs to be well functioning and relaxed. You must be, which kind of goes hand in hand, you must be running from, you must not be running from the bear that is not there, right? Like many of us, we are living in fight or flight, and that's our normal. But no matter how many amazing things you're doing, as long as your system is running in fight or flight, you're never going to heal. You're never going to heal your digestive system. And it doesn't matter how well you manage your stressors, no matter how well you manage your anxieties, how much breath work you do, or Kundalini yoga you do, or all the other things that you might be doing to manage your anxiety, your stressors, your nervous system, your haywire nervous system, none of that matters. The only thing that matters is how relaxed is your nervous system truly, how much. And it often has to do not just with the releasing of stress, but also the regeneration part. So therefore, nutrition needs to be on point. The microbiome needs to be good and varied. There's a lot of components there. Our, again, neuroendocrine system needs to be regenerated. We need to be getting the right nutrients into our body. And then not only do the right nutrients need to be getting into our body, but we also need to be able to assimilate those. And a lot of times, because of a lifetime of stress and, whether it's conscious or unconscious bad habits, a lot of times we simply have severely depleted our body on an enzyme level. So when we come in and we start working with the right enzymes, and we start flushing the body, and we start working with peptide bioregulators, and we start working on nutrition, and we start working on undoing the stressors. First, we need to identify them, and then we need to undo them in our system. Like, all of that takes time. And it's not a process that can be rushed, because it's a little bit like, right, growing a beautiful vegetable garden. We know that when the environment, when the circumstances are right, meaning when the soil is good, when the positioning of the land is good, meaning, the sun is hitting all at the right time, and then the surrounding nature is good, and when we give it the right care and the right amount of water and the right amount of sort of top nutrients, of course, it goes without saying that we are going to have incredible harvests, right? I mean, I don't have green fingers, but I do know that when I've hired people and I've watched them do all the correct things, it's like, of course, we're going to have amazing vegetables. And at the same time, of course, when any of the right ingredients is missing, of course, we are not going to have a great harvest. So I see healing and regeneration in the body the same way. If we are not getting the results that we are seeking, it's not because you're a rotten apple. It's not because your genetics are horrible. It's not because it's just your bad luck of the draw, but it's simply because you're not doing the right things. And oftentimes those right things are the very foundations, the very basics are missing. And what I see a lot in, the world of healing, functional medicine, biohacking, is that things actually get made way more complicated than they need to be. And I fell into all those traps as well, right? Thinking like, oh my gosh, what I actually need is, ozone therapy, and I need, what's the other that I'm thinking of? NAD therapy, and I need all these kind of sophisticated, and I need IV, and I need this, and I need that. All of those things, they can be helpful. Some of them can be detrimental, especially when used at the wrong time. They can be absolutely detrimental. So what I see happening a lot is that, functional medicine or other practitioners, they learn about these things, right? They learn about parasite cleansing, they learn about ozone therapy in some course, and boom, they go and apply this to everyone willy-nilly, without any preparation, without any of the foundational work. And the reality is, yes, you can spend thousands doing all those incredible treatments, which I'm not categorically against. I'm not. I've used them. I do suggest them sometimes to my clients, but it's not a given that that is what's going to resolve your situation, right? Like I see a lot of people, they go for continuous ozone therapy. And it's like, well, do you actually know why you're going to ozone therapy, and what is ozone therapy actually going to do in your specific case? Most often they don't even know. It's just like, oh, well, it's a fancy treatment. It's expensive. It must be good. No, ozone therapy can be detrimental in some cases if you haven't done the foundational work, and it can be a complete waste of your money if you don't have good foundations in place. It's as simple as that. So yeah, you can go, and of course it's going to help some, but ultimately it is not going to regenerate your body. And so you can do all these fancy things. You can go for NAD treatments. In some cases, same thing with NAD. When your system is really run down, when your adrenals are severely depleted, NAD can actually be detrimental. When you already have good foundations in place, good levels of health, and you go for some NAD, NAD can be helpful. In my very personal opinion, things like NAD often are way overrated, right? Especially in most people's cases. So we need to be very, very careful. And of course, I mean, I'm just now mentioning ozone and NAD. As we know, there's a long list of treatments, right? Hyperbaric, and the list goes on and on and on. We can include peptide therapy there. I often see people, and they'll come to me after like 2 years of having done every single peptide out there. And they've gone from peptide to peptide, and they've gone and done all these high-level, expensive things, but they haven't done the basics. And so then eventually, after 2-3 years, when they've done all the expensive treatments and all the laser this and laser that and intravenous and wadi, and then they go, oh my gosh, I'm still here after 2, 3, 4 years of doing all these treatments, and I'm still suffering from the same symptoms. I felt better here and there. I had great performance here and there, but ultimately I'm still suffering from those same symptoms. Why? What is going on? And that's the point where then they think, okay, well, it must be my genetics. It must be, that I'm a rotten apple, my, bad luck of the draw, whatever it is, bad karma. And it's none of that. It's simply that the foundations were missed. The foundational work hasn't been done. The lifestyle corrections haven't taken place. And another big point of why you may not be healing is that you may be stuck in dogmatic thinking. And I mean, I was going to say, we can do a whole episode. I will do a whole episode talking just about how damaging any level of dogmatic thinking is. And here again, I speak from personal experience. I will do a whole episode on this because super important conversation. For many years, I was convinced that unless I was going to be a raw vegan, high fruit, if I was going to eat anything else, I was going to harm myself seriously. And that, of course, wasn't true, isn't true. And at the same time, another huge danger in the world of healing and regeneration and so forth is that, let's say, right, like you heal yourself on a raw food diet, which a raw food diet has its merits. 100%. I will and would never go and badmouth, in fact, any diet, to be honest, right? But certainly and especially not a raw food plant-based diet, which is amazing when done correctly. Absolutely incredible. And at the same time, just because you healed yourself to a good degree with one system, does that mean that that's how you're going to thrive for the rest of your life? Does that mean that that is how you should live the rest of your life? No. I've seen people have radical improvements on a period of carnivore diet. Those improvements can't be taken away from them. They happened. They were not imagined. Okay? However, does that mean that they need to be on a carnivore diet for the rest of their life? No. Does that mean that that's what's going to serve them for the rest of their life? No. So that is what I say, that's what I mean when I say be careful of what dogmas you might be stuck in, because the dogma might be the very thing that is not serving you. Now, equally dangerous, and I will kind of wrap things up here. Equally dangerous is when you heal yourself on a raw food diet, then it no longer is able to take you further for various reasons that I'm not going to go into in this episode. Now you switch from your raw food diet to a carnivore or, a cooked whatever diet. And then you feel better. And now you go and demonize the diet that actually got you better. Also, any level of those kind of behaviors and thinking is only going to lead you ultimately to disease, because it's not healthy, true thinking, right? Every diet under the sun can have healing properties, can have its purpose. And at the same time, there is with a lot of flexibility, the reality is what most of us are going to thrive on is a predominantly plant-based diet. And then, of course, there's those who also are going to thrive on some level of animal products, and some periods might be higher or lower, but ultimately it is about learning the middle path. So I hope this episode helped you in identifying and understanding why you may not be healing. And just the last point I want to make, which I kind of touched upon, when I went into be careful of making things too complicated. But I want to add something there, because what I see, again, having helped many recover from situations where they thought, there was no way out. And oftentimes is when we complicate things and we take too many complex isolates at once without respecting our foundation, the foundational work, we're only going to create more confusion and more mess in the body. And the problem there is then you start thinking, oh my gosh, but I'm taking all the expensive things. I'm doing all the expensive things. Yes, but you're not doing the foundational work. And oftentimes, a big piece of the foundational work is to really set your mind right, to come back to a natural inner harmony that trusts your nature. And that also means trusting your disease. Your disease is not here to punish you. Your disease, your symptoms, not here to punish you, but actually every dis-ease, every symptom is here to teach you, to guide you back to your true self. And that is going to look different for everybody, right? Which is why dogmatic thinking is not going to help any of us at any point in time. I hope this was helpful. And as always, I welcome comments, questions, feedback. And even if you don't agree with me, absolutely welcome your comments, of course. Sending you all my love. Until the next one.